When Valve launched their Steam hardware, they unleashed an open ecosystem built on Linux capable of tearing down the artificial walls built by Microsoft and Sony. For years, console manufacturers have relied on platform lock-in to protect their ecosystems. If you wanted to play PlayStation 5 titles on a handheld without owning a physical console, Sony's official options left you dead in the water unless you bought into their specific hardware ecosystem. If you wanted to play PC Game Pass games locally on SteamOS, Microsoft locked you out entirely due to Windows exclusive systems. The gaming community's response to these restrictions has shifted. Independent developers and reverse engineers are systematically dismantling these barriers. Two breakthroughs have arrived almost simultaneously: Asobi Remote Play, an independent remote streaming client for your own PlayStation console with optional cloud streaming compatibility if you don't own one, and Exodus, an open source reverse engineering project aiming to run native PC Game Pass games locally on Linux. Together, these projects represent a massive milestone for open source gaming. They prove that Linux is no longer an alternative platform struggling for basic compatibility. It is actively transforming into a universal console capable of running titles from every major storefront in existence. To understand why projects like Asobi and Exodus are happening right now, you have to look at the broader shift in the PC gaming demographics. For decades, Linux gaming was dismissed as an obscure enthusiast hobby, but ever since Valve released the Steam Deck and steadily improved Proton, the platform's adoption numbers have hit unprecedented milestones. Data from web tracking platforms like StatCounter recently reported Linux crossing a massive 10% desktop market share milestone in North America, a figure that would have sounded fake just 5 years ago. Whether you attribute that surge to innovations like Proton, growing Windows fatigue, or hardware manufacturers increasingly shipping Linux-based devices, the momentum is undeniable. This creates a self-reinforcing flywheel. As the Linux user base expands, the incentive for community developers to build high-end tools increases, and we've reached a tipping point where Linux isn't just surviving on basic compatibility. Developers are actively building native-level integration for ecosystems that Microsoft and Sony refuse to support officially. And this will only continue to snowball. As more of these projects bridge the gap, more players get a reason to ditch Windows, fueling further innovation on Linux, which in turn attracts even more players. And the real power of this expanding ecosystem becomes obvious when you look at how community tools are tackling PlayStation remote streaming. Local streaming on Linux isn't brand new. Open source tools like ChiaKey and G have provided local PS4 and PS5 remote play options for users. If your PS5 is plugged in on your home network, ChiaKey and G handles local streaming remarkably well. But Asobi Remote Play is a bit different, and it's developed by Inside Internet with only one developer, Incenzo. It targets a completely different compatibility. Asobi integrates full support for PlayStation Plus premium cloud streaming. This single feature changes the entire situation. With an active PlayStation Plus premium plan, Asobi allows users to stream supported PS5 catalog titles, along with select digital PS5 games owned in their PlayStation library, directly from Sony's cloud servers. You do not need a physical PlayStation 5 console turned on in your living room. You do not even need to own a PlayStation 5 console at all. Sony locked official handheld cloud streaming behind their dedicated $200 PlayStation Portal hardware. Asobi brings that exact high-end capability directly into SteamOS, eliminating the need to buy extra devices with only one purpose. This highlights a stark contrast in product philosophy. When Sony launched the PlayStation Portal, they pitched it as a dedicated accessory for remote play within their ecosystem. But for handheld gamers who already owned a Steam Deck, ROG Ally running SteamOS, or a Linux handheld, buying a second $200 single-purpose device just to stream PlayStation games felt a bit redundant. Asobi bypasses that hardware hardware completely. It essentially takes the core appeal of dedicated cloud handhelds and bakes it straight into your existing library, proving that software freedom will almost always outpace lockdown accessories. And the behind the scenes of Asobi is equally impressive. Originating on Apple platforms before expanding to Android, Asobi entered a Steam playtest targeting Linux, SteamOS, Steam Deck, and Steam machines just recently. While a Windows 11 client is currently said to be in development, the initial push focuses heavily on optimizing for Linux. Instead of basic screen mirroring like something you would expect, Asobi handles performance like a native PC app. The free tier handles standard 1080p streaming at 30 FPS with automatic network bitrates, but the premium tier pushes the hardware to its limits. 1080p at 60 FPS, native HDR, 4K upscaling on external displays, and low latency network modes designed to eliminate Wi-Fi packet stutter. Crucially, input handling matches official controller standards. DualSense features like haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, gyroscopic aiming, and light bars work out of the box without messing with extra tools. While Sony's ecosystem is being opened up, Microsoft's ecosystem presents a completely different challenge. For years, PC Game Pass has remained a big missing link for people wanting to swap to Linux. Xbox cloud gaming exists, but streaming introduces noticeable input lag, requires subscription tiers, and other issues that just push people away. If you wanted to download and run your PC Game Pass games locally for maximum performance, you were forced to install Windows on your Steam hardware or other Linux devices. The main reason Valve's Proton translation layer couldn't run PC Game Pass games comes down to how Microsoft built its PC storefront. Proton translates graphics rendering effortlessly, which is why standard Steam games run so smoothly on Linux. But PC Game Pass titles don't fail because of graphics. They fail because Microsoft locks them inside a custom software security wrapper. When you download a Game Pass title through the official Xbox app on Windows, it isn't delivered like a normal game. It comes inside a heavily encrypted file container tied directly to hidden Windows system services. The moment the game launches, it continuously pings these background services in real time to verify your identity, check your Game Pass subscription status, and manage copyright protection. On a standard Linux setup running Proton, those proprietary Windows services simply just aren't there. When the game checks for those services and gets no response, it instantly crashes back to the desktop. So here enters Exodus. Spearheaded by developers closely tied to the open source Heroic Games launcher, Exodus is a community initiative built specifically to break this barrier. The team behind Exodus already solved third-party launcher integration for Epic, GOG, and Amazon. Now they're using that same expertise to tackle Xbox. Crucially, Exodus doesn't try to emulate Xbox console hardware. Instead, it recreates the hidden software background layer that Xbox PC games rely on under the hood. The development breaks down into 3 key steps. First, Exodus handles account authentication. It securely talks to Microsoft servers, logs into your Xbox account, verifies your Game Pass entitlements, and retrieves your legitimate game license. Second, it tackles decryption. Microsoft wraps PC Game Pass titles inside heavily encrypted storage containers. Exodus decrypts these install packages on the fly, allowing Linux to download and organize the raw game files. Third, and most important, it rebuilds Xbox system services. When an Xbox title boots up, it constantly pings Windows background services to verify your license and identity. Exodus acts as a middleman between the game and Proton, intercepting those system calls and feeding the game the exact identity tokens it expects to see on a real Windows PC. And Exodus has already achieved major technical milestones, logging into Xbox services, fetching user licenses, downloading packages, and decrypting containers are all functional. The core focus right now is finalizing the Xbox gaming runtime emulation so that games can initialize their boot sequence and enter fully playable states. We've already seen this exact progression competition unfold with other major storefronts. Years ago, playing Epic Games Store, GOG, or Amazon Prime gaming titles on Linux required awkward workarounds. Then, open source projects like Legendary and the Heroic Games launcher streamlined the entire process into clean, one-click interfaces. Heroic became the premier multi-storefront launcher on SteamOS and Linux by making native integration effortless. Exodus represents the final major frontier for that launcher ecosystem. By tackling Microsoft's GDK runtime layer, the team is completing the missing pillar of PC gaming distribution, giving full freedom to Linux gamers. The wider implications of these two projects reach far beyond just technical convenience. They highlight a fundamental shift in how games are accessed and played. Think about what this actually means. A single handheld like the Steam Deck or any Linux PC can now stream high-end PS5 games without ever owning the console, while downloading and running PC Game Pass titles locally. There are of course long-term risks. Neither Asobi nor Exodus has official endorsement from Sony or Microsoft, and both of these companies want to keep their closed ecosystems. If Sony or Microsoft change their backend systems, these clients could break until community developers patch them. Yet what makes this moment remarkable is how Valve's open source strategy with SteamOS enabled all of this. By choosing an open Linux architecture instead of a lockdown platform, Valve created an ecosystem where independent developers could extend hardware functionality for free. Valve didn't need to sign exclusive multi-million-dollar deals with Sony or Microsoft to bring their catalogs to SteamOS, which is why Linux seems to be hitting new milestones every single month. Platform exclusivity is no longer defined strictly by the hardware sitting on your desk. Open platforms are finally giving players complete control over where, when, and how they play their games. To stay updated on everything you want to know about Steam and Linux gaming, make sure you subscribe.